Welcome to the show. It is Mile High Sports today. I'm Sean Drotar. This is Nate Lundy.
That's like music out of a Holiday Inn lounge act, isn't it? From like 1984.
Yeah, I think of like
welcome to the Holiday Inn.
Like 1970s TV golf broadcasts.
Yeah.
Something like that.
But just like bad lounge music where there's some lady at the bar who's had like 16 martinis and she's just looking to get lucky. Yeah.
It's a lot of martinis.
That is a lot of martinis, but the problem is they make them really weak there at the old cheesy hotels, Sean. So you gotta down a few of those, or you're not gonna be doing too
it's
good.
Mostly just olive juice.
It's all it is. Yeah.
that's all
My favorite. Actually, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
And I'd actually take a poll. Is Dan over there too? Is Dan in the office?
Dan Mormon
okay, Dan Mormon's here. Dan Mormon is here as well. Danny Bailey is behind the screen because apparently you need to be named Dan to work here.
How'd we get it?
So here's my question. This is one of my favorite things that ever happened to my wife and I when we were out to dinner one night, Sean.
Okay.
My wife likes dirty martini. Okay. It's one of my wife's favorite beverages when we go out to dinner.
She has outstanding taste.
Okay. So she orders dirty martini.
Right.
And the waiter says, Colfax or Federal?
Woo.
Now, here's my question. I immediately looked at the waitress waiter and I said, which is dirtier?
You know which one's it. You know which one that is.
Tell me which one to you is dirtier, Colfax or Federal?
Federal.
See, we thought it was Colfax.
Oh.
Danny Bailey, which is dirtier, Federal or Colfax? He says Colfax. Dan Mormon, who is in the other studio right now. What is Dan's vote? Can he even hear? He says Colfax. All right, you're outnumbered. You're outnumbered, Drotar. It's Colfax. If you have a vote, hit us up in the comments. I want to know how you would have answered that question because the whole idea here is that my wife likes
that was
martini
Colfax like
extra
10
dirty
years ago in a different. But there's been some urban renewal going on.
I have been trying.
Hasn't worked its way over yet.
Whenever we go out now, we talk about that story. We talk about it with friends. We do the whole thing. And we ask that question. All right, how would you have answered if the whole idea is you wanted extra dirty? Because she does. She likes it extra dirty, right? Give her the olives, the olive juice, the whole thing. And sometimes there's a bit of a debate as to which one is worse when it comes to dirty. And so I just want, so if you're watching, you're in the comments. I want to know. I want to know what your vote is.
It's a good thing she knew you were local because I think you tried to drop that for somebody who's like in for a football game and they're like, I'm from Pittsburgh. Nothing means anything.
It's like I'm in town from Sioux City.
Right.
Help me out of here a little bit.
I don't know what either. Is that good, bad? I don't even know.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know what was dirty? Trying to bet on week 2 in the National Football League because that was ugly. Do you know of the 6 biggest dogs this weekend? They all went 6-0 against the spread.
8 out and out upsets, straight up.
6. The biggest underdogs went 6-0 ATS, and 4 of those 6 won straight up. To your point, and the one that didn't was the one that should have, which is the Bengals. Otherwise, it would have been 5 straight up,
right? And
6-0 against the spread. So as we put a bow on week 2 last night with the Kirk Cousins miracle game in Philly.
Talk about bad beats.
Oh my goodness, it was a bad beat for a lot of folks.
We talked about some of the things we had there, right?
Yep.
I had the Saquon Barkley, and I had a couple I had the parlay with Barkley and Bijan Robinson and Jalen Hurts for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Hit all those, no problem. Hit all those. So in general, pretty good. But the big one, you get those no sweat ones, right?
Yes.
And so you swing big on that.
Yeah. Like mine was for Philly's defense to have a touchdown because I thought Kirk Cousins would do something stupid.
Right. I went with Robinson had to have over 100 rushing receiving.
Okay.
Saquon had 100 rushing receiving.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts had to have a touchdown. Yes. And all the Eagles had to do was win to get my plus 1,300.
Oh, the pain.
Of course.
The pain.
Of course. We learned a little bit about analytics as well, obviously, in this, because some of the advanced analytics showed that even when the Eagles chose to kick the field goal late, their odds of winning actually went
down.
And that's in part because and here's why it actually makes sense. When a team is down 3, right, they're generally just looking to go get the field goal, especially when they're on the road. So that comes into play too. But when you're down 6, you have to go for the touchdown. You get more aggressive play calling. That's part of the equation. So actually the situation where they kick the field goal, your chances of winning went down, kind of proved it, not by a lot, but a little bit. And that's interesting. There were some statistical milestones in the NFL this week. Kyler Murray became only the second player in the history of the NFL to have this line, 250 plus passing yards, 50 plus rushing yards, a perfect passer rating of 158.3, which I know it's kind of on its way out, but nevertheless, the first person to do that in 50 years, Kenny Anderson of the Bengals did it back in 1974. That's the last person to do that. Yeah. So Kyler Murray in only a couple weeks in, I looked at some of the doing the rounds this morning. Your co-host on your podcast, Brad Evans, said, don't be surprised in a couple of weeks if Kyler Murray's QB1, not for the Cards, for the whole NFL.
Yeah, and I think there were a lot of people that thought that he could have a good year. There were some people that took long shot bets on him from the MVP standpoint. There were folks that thought that he was a good use of a long shot bet for the season. If you listen to the pod that Sean was just talking about, the Fade 5, that I do 3 times a week with Brad Evans, you know that I do not like season-long bets. I don't do them.
You're not patient enough.
No, I don't.
I respect.
I don't like tying. I don't like tying up my money.
I'm with you.
I don't like you. I don't like tying up my money.
Makes sense, but I'm with you.
To me, I'd rather have some short-term things. Now, if they offer me some sort of a boost or something like that, then yes, I might throw $25 on something and let it just sit there in my account. But I don't really like to do that, to be honest with you. But there were a lot of folks that wanted to be able to do that play with Kyler. And what you've seen so far, it is impressive. Obviously, the number that nobody has done in 50 years. Yeah. Is impressive. I thought the way in which they just spanked the Rams, because that wasn't even close. I mean, that was those 2 games in the NFC on Sunday between the Saints absolutely waxing Dallas in Dallas.
That was never a game.
And then Arizona doing the same thing. And obviously, you're looking at the opening game against the Bills that they lost, but they held in there.
Yeah, they did.
Against Buffalo. Now, here's what's going to be interesting, I think, for Kyler Murray and company. They've got the Commanders coming up, or excuse me, the Lions coming up this weekend.
That might be fun to watch.
That's going to be a fun one. That's going to be a fun one to watch, and it's in the desert on that one. Then they get the Commanders, but then they have to go to the Niners and the Packers. Now, there's all kinds of questions as to what to expect with Jordan Love and what his timing is and all of those kinds of things. Then after that, they go Chargers, Dolphins, Bears. Well, they can beat the Chargers. They can beat the Bears.
I think.
So,
the Dolphins are beatable.
They could be sitting on a pretty nice record by the time they come out of this stretch. And Kyler Murray, as you said, could be sitting there as, an odds-on favorite for the MVP.
There's a way to go, obviously, even with that game, as terrific as it was. Murray's still only averaging 214 yards a game. The leader in passing is Brock Purdy at 275 per. Number 3 there, Gardner Minshew, actually tied, I should say, number 2 with Matthew Stafford.
That's because garbage time counts.
Garbage time counts. We'll talk a little bit more about the AFC West in a moment as well. But, I mean, you had some interesting stats when you're talking about the passing game. Now, through week 2, 193.2 yards per game is the average amount of passing per team. That's the lowest in a decade, and the first time under 200 yards a game. So, does that mean defenses are coming along? Does it mean that offenses are all, and I think it's a little bit of both. I think defenses are funny thing is it's the opposite. Offenses are getting more complicated with more movement, more play action, more on that. And the Broncos not doing it in a bit in this show too. But defenses have kind of gone in the Vic Fangio way. They're not showing anything anymore. They're leaving things flat. And then I think the other thing that moves the number down is you have more Kyler Murray's, Josh Allen's.
Yeah.
Lamar
Jackson.
Bo Nix leading the Broncos in rushing. I mean, you have quarterbacks now doing more dynamic things. Your Jalen Hurts, all these guys. So I think the passing numbers go down a little bit. I don't know if it means all that much, but you've had some weird ones. You had a 6 field goal game that was a win for the Bears in week 1. You had a 7 field goal game for the Commanders. Means if you're the Giants, if things weren't bad enough for the Giants, only the Giants and the Panthers are worse than the Broncos after 2 games. I think that's reasonably fair. You can nitpick here and there, but I think that's reasonably fair. But the Giants became the first team in the history of the NFL, period, to score 3 touchdowns, allow no touchdowns, and lose in regulation. Never happened. Only the Giants.
Yeah, that sounds about right
Oh
for
my
what I would
goodness.
expect out of the Giants. And look, unfortunately, and we'll get into it later on in the program, and you get a chance to talk to Doug Ottewell about it, et cetera. I mean, we'll get more into it, but the Broncos are right there with them on the basement doorstep. So
yeah, it's close.
But I think that the idea of the passing touchdowns, for example, a stat that was shared in numerous places, Next Gen Stats, et cetera, talking about the lack of passing touchdowns. Look, I think it's pretty easy to look at it from the eye test standpoint. You brought up the quarterbacks that have the running ability. We talk about RPO being used by a number of different teams. I think that's pretty obvious that there are some things just taking place in general in the National Football League at the quarterback position. Like, look who's not playing anymore. Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Eli Manning. Brett Favre. I mean, I can keep going down the list. Aaron Rodgers is going to be done here before too long. So is Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
You're getting away from those traditional pocket passers and guys that can scramble. And I think you're also looking at offenses that are, I think they're trying to utilize the running game because they're trying to avoid having to put everything on the quarterback's shoulders. It's the most important position in sports. And they still recognize that they can't have these guys doing it all the time. I also think that when I brought up the names of all the guys that are gone, right, the Mannings and
Pocket
the Brees
passers
and all of that, it's not just that. It's that we went through this wave where that was the top tier of the quarterback. Those guys are gone. And now there is this new tier that is coming up, and some of that tier is not ready yet. If we're being honest.
Also true. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
100% true.
There's some of that too.
There are no, it's only 2 weeks, but no rookie quarterbacks throwing a touchdown pass.
We're sitting in this sort of weird in between time, I feel like, with the quarterback position. And I think that's why you're trying to see some more running back. It's why so many teams are doing an RBBC, a running back by committee. All of those, I think there's just a lot of this shift that has taken place, aside from the fact that right now on numerous NFL teams, the best player on the field is on the defensive side of the ball, not the offensive side of the ball. And that hasn't always been the case when we've talked about the history of the National Football League.
Yeah, well, it's certainly the case for the Denver Broncos, but it's looking at the rest of the AFC West. We saw the Chiefs come back, win on a last-second field goal against the Bengals. The Chiefs and Bengals, I get it's not a rivalry. I get it. It is not. But, man, when those two teams play, you need to watch that game because whatever happens, it seems like every single one of those games is really, really fun to watch. Some late calls there, maybe some frustrating things for some Bengals. The Bengals fans, they're now 0-2. Chiefs, however, 2-0. The Raiders on the road go into Baltimore. They stun the Ravens. They get their first win. Gardner Minshew getting it to Devonta Adams, Brock Bowers, and having no problem adjusting to the NFL, looking like the next dominant tight end in the NFL in very short order. And then the Chargers get the Panthers. They do what they're supposed to do. They absolutely bury them. But how about this? The Chargers, the concern was, does Justin Herbert have enough weapons? And on the outside, you don't know. You have Ladd McConkey, you have Joshua Palmer. McConkey's a rookie. Palmer is kind of a intriguing prospect, but not a lot there to be sure of. But 2 cast-off running backs from those Ravens, J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards. Dobbins, in 2 games, now leads the entire NFL in rushing. So things are going great for the Chiefs. They're going great for the Chargers. Going surprisingly well for the Raiders. And the Denver Broncos have 26 points on the season.
Yep.
And they're 0-2, all alone in the bottom of the AFC West. And
hold on while I get my shocked face ready.
I know, but here it is, 2 weeks in.
But
yeah,
if you're surprised,
you shouldn't be surprised.
Paying attention,
folks. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be fun this year.
It's not. It isn't going to be fun. It is going to be fun on the program today because Doug Ottewell, never one short for opinions.
Not usually. No.
Will be coming up later on in the program. And what the heck are the Buffs going to do as they get ready for Baylor? The host of the SCO Show, Anilo Piro, will be joining us as well. So that'll get us. We'll be able to bounce all over the place today.
Yeah, we'll be able to talk about that for sure. And if you're not done with the gory numbers with the Denver Broncos, I have many more from you. We'll be back with more of them in just a moment.
BYB Bare Knuckle returns to Denver, Colorado, Saturday, September 21st. for the long-awaited rematch of the 2023 Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame Fight of the Year in one of the greatest bare knuckle battles to ever take place in the Trigon. As former BYB lightweight champion, Mark the Shark Irwin looks to regain his title against the man who took it from him, Julio Tenori. Plus, BYB women's lightweight champion Patty Juarez looks to become BYB's first two-division women's champion when she faces Courtney Cameron for the BYB super lightweight title. Don't miss these great matchups and much more. Visit BYBExtreme.com for tickets and information.
All right, Nate, for the Denver Broncos, presumably the ability to throw deep has value. Maybe not in the short term, but in the longer term, it almost certainly does. So now you're talking about some challenges here with Bo Nix. On the year, the numbers are pretty ugly. 59.7% completion, 192 pass yards per game. What did we say the average was? 193.2. So he's right about there. This, however, is not. No touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 4 sacks, passer rating of 51. That in and of itself is bad, but this is staggering. And when you're talking about a guy in Bo Nix who led the country in completion percentage in major college football, who had a terrific touchdown interception ratio, and we know the pros are a different animal, but how about this? On 10 yards or more down the field this season, here's Bo Nix's numbers. Deep breaths, everyone. 5 for 24. It's a 20.8 completion percentage, 132 yards, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Let me give you those first and last numbers again. On passes further than 10 yards downfield, that's, 30 feet. That's what you and your buddy go throw in the park. Bo Nix has 5 completions and 4 interceptions. That's not bad. That's disastrous.
That's 9 completions, technically.
Well, it's 9 times the ball didn't hit the ground, at least.
I mean, he gave the greatest answer I've seen in years post game.
Ask a silly question. Get
I loved his answer. I thought it was great. Drop back, threw it to the other team.
The other team's not wrong.
I mean, he's not wrong. And I thought it was great.
There's nothing to explain.
I'm begging Sean Payton to be transparent and honest. Bo Nix apparently got that memo, so I appreciate it. Here's, I want to read you a couple of things from March. All right.
Okay. So
March.
This is pre-draft.
March 2024. I remember it well. This is your scouting report on Bo Nix. And I want to read just a couple of things when it talks about his negatives. And I want to find out from you as you're watching. Feel free to comment if these sound familiar to you. And please remember, these were written more than 6 months ago. These are his negatives. I'm not going to worry about his positives because I think he's got a lot of positives and I'm not too worried about him yet. Okay. But here's the negatives. Oregon did not ask a lot of him as a processor down the field. Ran a ton of screens, RPOs, and simple vertical concepts. All right. I want to read that one just one more time because we're going to come back to it. Ton of screens, RPOs, and simple vertical concepts. Additional negatives on him. Here's a fun one. Inconsistent drop back footwork. Whoa.
That's what we've seen, isn't it?
Too often disrupts his timing when working full-bodied drop back passing concepts. Below average ability to find answers within structure when first read is taken away. Inconsistent toughness in the pocket, shows good flashes, but too often falls away from throws. Back foot.
Yep.
Now, he has a ton of assets, including up here. So I don't have this massive concern about his ability to get to this. But here's something that took place, and this is what I was going to bring up, and I want Sean to be able to connect the dots because he's been saying this. Did you watch any of the Manning cast last night?
I watched some of it.
Okay. If you watched the Manning cast, and if you didn't, it's fine. First of all, Bill Belichick and Peyton Manning, they should go on tour together. I'd pay money to just watch those two riff nonstop. However, toward the end of the game, as Kirk Cousins was putting this together, it was Peyton, it was Eli, and it was Matt Ryan on the screen. If you didn't watch the entire broadcast, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Go back and watch the about 4 minutes of the three of them talking about that were following Atlanta and their game-winning drive, okay? Just go find it. It's posted everywhere on social media right now, not the least of which is on Omaha Productions. Just go find it, okay? And if you haven't watched it, I'm going to paraphrase, but they're obviously having fun. They're watching what's happening. Peyton's like coaching from his couch, which I always love about the Manning cast. But here's what I found brilliant in their breakdown that I wish we could inject into like sci-fi style. I want to inject it right into Sean Payton's cranium. Peyton and Matt Ryan were talking about how when you are running that 2-minute offense, that one of the reasons that we see that have success for quarterbacks is because you essentially dumb it down. You get to the point where you're calling the most basic plays. You're calling, as Peyton said, the first installs. You're calling the plays that are the first plays you learned when you got to camp, because they're trying to simplify it and they're trying to make sure that everybody can move quickly because the clock is your enemy. You don't have time to do complicated routes. You don't have time to do complicated communication with your receivers when you're not doing any substitutions and you can't huddle. And so what happens is you wind up calling the most simplified plays. And that's exactly what Atlanta did. And it's exactly why they won the game last night. What did I just read you? That was the scouting report. And there are plenty of scouting reports about Bo Nix. I'm sure Sean Payton has his own. But what did I just tell you is in the scouting report from 6 months ago about Bo Nix. It talked about him having some inconsistencies when his first read isn't there. It talked about him having a hard time processing the play and the procedure further down the field. So right now, and what have we seen? It's very similar to what Sean brought up on Monday's program yesterday right here. And if you didn't watch it, go back and watch it. They're always available on demand. When Sean said, where did he look good? He looked good when he was out on the outside and he was improvising. And folks, that's exactly when Russell Wilson looked good last year.
Bingo.
Was when he got out of the pocket and was like, woo, let me see what I can do. So right now, it's possible that what's necessary, even from a scouting report from 6 months ago, is to simplify some things for Bo. You're about to go on the road for 2 straight games against 2 very difficult opponents. So simplify some things and take a page out of what happened at the end of the game yesterday with Atlanta and Philadelphia. And if, like I said, it's a great sequence, by the way, in part because it's somewhat humorous with these 3 quarterbacks all talking about this at the same time. But go watch the 4-minute, 4.5, whatever it is, clip of Peyton, Eli, and Matt Ryan last night at the end of the Manning cast talking about that drive for Atlanta, and then start to process that and put it together with your favorite team, and in particular for us, my favorite team of the Broncos, and what I think they can do with Bo Nix.
Well, think about, Nate, and I appreciate you bringing that back because, yeah, I think this has all been made pretty obvious when you're talking about Wilson, Stidham, Nix. Same performances. In fact, Wilson's numbers were quite a bit better than Stidham's and Nix's, especially when it comes to points per game because he's more of a veteran. But consider what we're talking about when we went to the previous segment. We're talking a little bit about the idea of the quarterback position in transition, as Nate put it. And he's right. So when John Harbaugh is calling plays for Lamar Jackson, okay, there's a lot of options. Does that mean you're going to have that really long string of verbiage and snap the ball at 3 seconds? Probably not, because you realize that with a guy like Lamar Jackson, you're going to let him do his first read, his second read. Then you're going to say, hey, Lamar Jackson, do Lamar Jackson things. Jalen Hurts, go do Jalen Hurts things. Josh Allen, go do Josh Allen things. You kind of get the point, right? Even guys that aren't runners, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. We see those guys go all over the field. They scramble, they create, they do that sort of stuff. As we get better and better athletes at the quarterback position, it actually becomes more important for coaches to understand that it is less about just moving little chess pieces on the board. And a lot of coaches, especially the style that Peyton, Parcells, the control type of coaches, where you look at it and they're like, they're the geniuses that win the games, right? Well, that was always a bit of a myth. Players win games and players create. Mike Shanahan was a brilliant coach. When John Elway went off script, shook off a guy trying to sack him, rolled off to the other side, then threw across his body 40 yards downfield. That wasn't something in the playbook, okay? That wasn't something that they called. You let your great players do great things. Now, the Broncos don't have one of those in Bo Nix, and I don't think his ceiling is that high. I've been saying his ceiling was that he kind of looked like Derek Carr. I may have been heavily disrespecting Derek Carr now under Clint Kubiak's playbook as the offensive coordinator. Look what that happens. Some creativity in there changes things dramatically, and more on that later as well. But what you're seeing with Nix is exactly what Nate's talking about. This offense has to be simplified. And it doesn't have to be simplified for Nix. If a guy that played 10 years in the league like Russell Wilson was having trouble getting the plays in on time, it's simply too complicated. And you don't allow your quarterback, and a guy like Wilson, I get it, not known as Peyton Manning in reading defenses, but he's not a chump. It's not as if he's won as many games and came to Denver as a likely Hall of Famer, because he doesn't know anything about how to look at a defense. But when you have these guys snap with 3 to 5 seconds on the clock, you can't read the defense. It takes too long to get the plays in. It takes too long to get the plays explained. This is not how the NFL works now. It's a speed and space game. And Peyton and the Broncos are calling it as if it was something still out of the 1980s and 1990s. And that's not the way the game works anymore. Bo Nix never played, wasn't even born in the era in which this style of coaching existed. He's never dealt with it. And so this becomes far too much of a problem for this team because they simply don't have the ability to get this all. It's not necessarily about processing, Nate. And that's the thing, right? We hear about processing. We hear about Russell Wilson can't handle this, can't handle all the verbiage. Well, it's not that he can't. And it's not that Bo Nix can't. It's just that it's probably too much. It doesn't give the quarterbacks in the offense the ability to read the defense, audible, adjust, do what they need to do, whether they're a rookie like Nix, a journeyman like Stidham, or a 10-year veteran like Wilson. When those three types of players all have the identical problem of getting to the line of scrimmage with 10 or more seconds so they can at least look at what they're doing and not have to just snap it, that's on the coaches. And that has to be part of this discussion. So anytime you look at the way Bo Nix will improve, it can't happen in a vacuum. The Broncos have to be better. The coaches have to be better. Look at the comparison. Kyler Murray on 10-yard throws. We talked about his great day yesterday. 7 for 9, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns.
I think the other thing I want to throw in real quickly, because you're bringing up Kyler Murray, and I know we're going to shift gears over to the college.
Kyler Murray is not known as some sort of ace passer,
well,
right?
no, it's not. Here's actually one of the things I'd like to do. You just talked about a guy that is sitting here with a 158.3 with a perfect rating, right? But he's also a guy that was being seriously doubted in Arizona about a year and a half ago.
Certainly.
Takes a little bit of time sometimes, folks. It just does.
And it takes the right fit.
It just, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Because you know what Kyler has at this point, aside from he's got a coach that he can work, he's got some talent. He's got some talent around him now.
Can we ease up on that after one game? Marvin Harrison is too slow.
Right. I mean, he's got Marvin Harrison Jr., who I think is going to continue to get better. He's got McBride at the tight end position. He's got James Conner, who's a great running back. He's got talent. Bo Nix doesn't have it yet.
No, that's the other part of the equation, too. And the one things where you think he does have talent, Marvin Mims, for example, to open it up deep, 9 offensive snaps on Sunday, a new career low. If you're looking for the perfect place to work, play, exercise, and socialize, then you don't have to look any further than the Denver Athletic Club. Right in the heart of downtown Denver. As a DAC member, you'll enjoy top-notch amenities like the full fitness center that you expect, of course, but you'll also get a licensed childcare center, spa, massage, Pilates, a golf simulator, and even more. But what truly sets the DAC apart, and our next guest can mention that as well, is its vibrant community. The member-owned club is all about you, offering year-round social events, co-working, dining, and fun for the entire family. The Denver Athletic Club is truly a club for your whole life. So join the DAC today. Visit denverathleticClub.cc for all the details. And joining us now to talk about the Colorado Buffaloes is the host of the SCO Show, and you can catch him down at the watch parties that Mile High Sports and the SCO Show put together before every Buffalo home game down at number 38 in Rhino. Our fellow DAC member and from Mile High Sports, Nilo Piro. Nilo, thanks for joining us.
What is up, Drotar? What is up, DB behind the glass? I know Nate is over there as well. Hope you guys are doing well. And yeah, I love the DAC, man. For any of you Denver sports fans that are in the Denver metro area, if you're looking for a new gym, you know, a lot of these gyms downtown are just slam packed. Go to the DAC. I'm going later this afternoon. A little workout, little sauna, a little sweat. It's going to be a good time. And yeah, host of the SCO Show, my buddy Chase Howell and I will be taping tomorrow morning. You can check that out on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel. We've also got Adam Munstertiger of Buff Stampede, who joins us on the show each and every week to give us his fantastic insight. And for any of the Buff faithful out there that are looking for a place to come watch the games, our watch parties at number 38 in Rhino have been absolutely electric this season. Danny Bailey was there with me last week. I mean, the place is packed out with Buff fans. People were singing the fight song when they would score a touchdown, chirping at the CSU fans last weekend. So number 38 is the place to be for all of your Colorado Buffaloes football games this season.
Well, there was a lot of chirping as the Buffs knock off the Rams 28-9 in Fort Collins, a game that, quite frankly, probably wasn't as close as that score indicated. The Buffs just couldn't get anything going early on, as has been a problem for them. Not only just this year, but really under Deion Sanders. Slow starts have been a concern. They'll have to find a way to alleviate that. Starting this week, they get their Big 12 opener against Baylor. But let's look back at the Rocky Mountain Showdown, maybe the last one, unless scheduling changes, until 2029, right? I mean, that's too bad. And I bet after looking at the national broadcasts over the last 2 years of it in primetime, I bet they'd like more of it as well. But with the Buffs find a way to get it done, they don't have Dallin Hayden, the transfer from Ohio State, and yet this game is the one they finally get over 100 yards rushing. That changed the way things worked for the Buffalo's offense across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the slow start. I was kind of sitting there because remember, Colorado State took Colorado to triple overtime in last year, or double overtime.
Double overtime, but
long game is what I'm trying to say either way. I remember I got out of that press box at like 2:30 in the morning. And
lucky you.
Yeah, Colorado State was able to hold their own previously. And, I was a little concerned that it might be pretty similar coming into this version of the showdown. So we'll see, if Colorado's going to be able to move forward against Baylor, but they managed to keep their foot on the gas. I loved how they made a concerted effort to establish the run. I thought that was a big difference maker in this game for the Buffs. And at the end of the day, talent wins out, and Colorado has a litany of talent on the offensive line, or on the offensive side of the ball, skill positions, wide receiver. But I think establishing that run really helped Colorado keep their foot on the gas in this one. So hopefully they can build some momentum. I've also got to say this. I apologize for the CSU Ram fans out there. They're no good. They're not very good, guys. I don't know how Jay Norvell is going to potentially have a job after this season. They're just not a good football program.
Here's the thing, is I actually think the Rams are still going in the right direction, but this year is rough. And obviously the loss of Torrey Horton really hurt them in this game. He gave it a go. He clearly wasn't right. He wasn't able to finish the game, and that was a big difference maker as well. But yeah, I think there was just a big talent difference on display. Travis Hunter does his thing, but it's even more than Hunter, because now this year you have Jimmy Horn, you have LaJohntay West, who I told everyone you better start watching out for. Then you have Will Shepherd. They have more receivers than they know what to do with. The lack of a tight end has been problematic when it comes to the running game, but not for the receiving game. My question would not be about the Buffs and the performance there. Shedeur Sanders, 310 yards, 4 touchdowns, and only 1 sack. But the idea of passing late. Do the Buffs have to guard against this a little bit? The idea that they take too many things personally, and they maybe, quite frankly, whether it's Deion Sanders, Pat Shurmur, or Shedeur Sanders, they're letting Shedeur call his own number late. In the last 2 games, both of them that they won, the Buffs had the opportunity to run the clock down to nothing, and they chose not to because they wanted to make a point. In neither case did it actually help them. In neither case did they actually make their point, and it actually made winning the game harder. How do they find a way to tighten that up and get it better? Is that Shedeur's stubbornness, Shurmur's stubbornness, Deion Sanders' stubbornness? It doesn't sound like it's Deion, because after the games he talks about the needing to do the run more, and they got more from the run. But is Shedeur basically getting a little too much leverage over the offense?
It's a circus act. And I say that not necessarily in a negative way, but like they are just the definition of unconventional. And I'm not necessarily surprised that, I guess I'm a little surprised, I would say, that they're doing all this, but if there's any program or quarterback that I would expect this from.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump over you there, but I had a poll on social at the time. I actually put, but after the drive, will the Buffs start running the ball, and as they've had success and run the clock down, or will they chuck it? Got a bunch of responses on it, and I put after it, like, you realize this is a trick question. Everyone knows they're just going to keep chucking it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
and
the problem, though. Unconventional is good, but when everybody knows what you're going to do, that's not.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I kind of just chalk it up to, If you're going to win games, you're going to win games, but nothing's going to change CU unless I just don't know why. There's no logical explanation to do this outside of ego and outside of just trying to be flashy and run up the score. Like, I mean, from all the football knowledge that I know, that you know, that Danny and Nate and everybody with a brain that has watched football for more than a few years knows that you just run the ball out. Look at the Philadelphia Eagles last night. They were trying to get cute and throwing the ball there on, what was it, 3rd and 3 when the clock was their biggest opponent, not exactly the Atlanta Falcons. So I think it's dumb, but that's Colorado football, baby. They're just in their own league when it comes to this kind of decision making. I don't really know what to make of it, but I don't really expect it to change anytime soon.
No, I really don't. And I think it's obviously it's going to be concerning. You talk about the situation with Baylor. It's a little bit different. There's no bad blood anymore because Dave Aranda, the head coach of Baylor, had an opportunity to talk a little bit about the game this week. Let's hear what he said.
A lot of work to do for this next week. A lot of respect for our opponent, the skill they have, the improved line of scrimmage play. It's a team that looks like they're trending up, and it's going to be a tough environment for us. A lot of positives for us in this game too, but it's going to take our best. Yeah, I have a lot of respect offensively for what they do. Quarterback makes some really hard throws. If he knows what you're in, he eats you up. And then I think the skill is such to where you can only double cover so many people. You can see the talking and the communication up front where they're able to hold off, and then you're getting, quarterback stepping in, taking hits as he's getting the ball out, and just like it's that's a whole NFL thing right there. And so I have a lot of respect, and it's going to take our best. I have a lot of respect for him. I think the energy and notoriety and the juice that he's brought to that program, I think he's doing a great job. I have a lot of respect for him.
One, hearing Dave Aranda talk is really, really relaxing, which I appreciate after having to talk about the Broncos the first couple of segments there, but definitely not putting any bulletin board material up on the Buffs.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I was actually listening to a couple weeks ago, our guy, Dr. Rick Perea, had former Denver Bronco and Super Bowl 50 champion David Burton on the show. And he was a special teams guy. And one of the things that we're talking about was the continuity and the camaraderie that Super Bowl 50 squad had, in particular on defense, right? But the Buffs are football meets reality TV. That is the best way to explain it. If you've ever watched like Love Island or like Hell's Kitchen or like any of these reality TV shows, right? Like they have the natural talent, they do, but they just do things that garner a ton of attention. Hashtag or social media tags on the back of jerseys. Shador Sanders refusing to shake the hand of Braden Fowler-Nicolosi because of him talking on Instagram, right? And so the reason I bring up the David Burton interview with Dr. P, though, is camaraderie matters. Continuity matters. We know that Colorado has an embarrassment of riches at the skill positions, at quarterback, on defense at times. There's no question about the level of talent, but can they play as a unit as opposed to playing for individuals? We saw them rally in the second half against North Dakota State. We saw them keep their foot on the gas against Colorado State, and they just got absolutely blitzkrieged by Nebraska in their second game of the season. So when I hear that approach from the Baylor head coach, you can't give them anything. You can't add fuel to their fire because they're going to use that as motivation. Will that end up being the difference? I'm not so sure, but it's one of those situations where Colorado knows what they need to do to win. These guys believe in themselves, but this is a huge test for them this week in the Big 12. Their reintroduction to the conference against a program in Baylor who's battle-tested, has experienced players, and at the end of the day, I love the talent Colorado has, but if they're unable to put it all together collectively as a unit, this team ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, and they need to start faster. In Baylor's case, they're 2-1. Both of their wins, dominant wins, but of course they opened against Tarleton State, 45-3 win there, and then they beat Air Force last weekend, 31-3. But their loss was to Utah, ranked 11th at the time, 23-12. They were game. They were game, and the Buffaloes are not to cruise by any stretch of the imagination. The Buffs now listed as a 1-point favorite. They opened and now it's up to 2. So basically this is a coin toss. It's basically the folks in Vegas admitting that they're not even sure really what we've got with these teams. And that's interesting because even if you go to last year, you're talking about teams that have won 2 of their last 5. Baylor skidded to a halt at the end of the year as well. But for the Buffs, there is value in the way that they play, but I get that Travis Hunter, to my mind, is the best player in college football, regardless of position.
Yep.
I don't think he'll win the Heisman because I don't think the Buffaloes are going to be good enough to do it, but he'll be in the mix. But there has to be a little bit of focus to make sure that this isn't just the Shedeur and Travis show, because that will go well enough against the Colorado States and the North Dakota States, but it didn't go against Nebraska. Maybe it'll be okay against Baylor, but this schedule is really hard. And to get to 6 wins and to get to a bowl, they have to do a lot more than that. They need more Micah Welch. They need more of LeJontay Wester. They need better defensive performances across the board. They still need to get more pressure on the quarterback. There's a lot for the Buffs to do. This win over the Rams, I think, can give them maybe a false sense of security, and that can't linger, because if the Buffs find themselves down by at halftime again against Baylor, they may not be able to come back.
You mentioned that it's essentially a pick'em game on the betting lines. I wouldn't touch CU as a favorite. No way.
No,
Because I think back to last year, TCU, they caught them after riding the high of that magic carpet ride that they had. So there was a little bit of fluctuation in the talent level there. Exactly. Nebraska's quarterback was god-awful, and then you fast forward, they beat Arizona State. What is Arizona State, right? But then you get into that quality play. You see USC coming to town. You see some of these other teams play Colorado tough, and I'm still seeing a lot of the same issues with Colorado this year that I saw last season as well. And that's why I think this is such a gut check game for them, because this is an opportunity for Colorado to show what they're made of against the big boys. You mentioned you're expected to win against North Dakota State. You're expected to beat Colorado State. You should have been more competitive in that game against Nebraska, who's probably the one opponent that is the biggest comparison to teams that you're going to be playing moving forward. And the schedule only gets more and more difficult after this week. So the way that I see it is Colorado needs to show me that they can punch at their weight or above their weight. They're great at punching down. They're great at beating teams that are, air quotes, worse than them or have less talent than them, taking care of business. Can they get up for the moment? And once again, Sean, play as a unit, play together. If Colorado is going to be able to do that, I think they have a chance. I just haven't seen it yet.
Buffaloes will take on Baylor at Folsom Field, 6 p.m. on Saturday night. This will be game number 4, primetime television, national TV game number 4 for the Buffs, this time on Fox. He's Elo Piro, the host of the SCO Show, and of course at Mile High Sports. Make sure you check out everything he puts together there, and a host of the Broncos and Rockies Locked On Postcast. Both of them have been about equally fun of late.
Walk-off victory for the Rocks last night. How
That's
about
true.
that, Antonio Senzatella? Welcome back.
Absolutely. First time since May of 23. So welcome back to Antonio Senzatella as well. Elo Piro, one of the busiest men in Denver. Make sure you give him a follow and keep up with everything that he is doing. And that is a job unto itself. Thanks for the time, Elo.
Have a good one, guys. Have a good show.
All right, take care. Elo Piro joining us. Want to remind you, obviously, if you're a young athlete, there's a lot to focus on. If there's a lot at the high school level and college level, and trying to make sure your head's in the right place is always a challenge. But whether you're one of those athletes, or whether you're a parent of one of those athletes, or whether you just work at whatever job you work at and you would like to be able to be a little sharper, you can get your checkup from the neck up from our friend, Dr. Rick Priya. You heard Elo mention him, and you can catch him right here on Mile High Sports on Wellness Wednesdays. Performance psychologist, worked with the Broncos during their championship run, have worked the Rockies when they made the postseason, worked with multiple NFL teams and organizations around the state and around the country, but we'll also be able to work with you with whatever you do. Check out everything that Dr. Rick does over at think14u.org. That's think14, the number 4u.org. Get your checkup from the neck up with Dr. Rick Priya and find out more about it. You heard about the last Wellness Wednesday with David Bruton, of course, of the Denver Broncos. Terrific stuff that Dr. Rick puts together there too. And the next one, of course, will be tomorrow. So check it out and then visit the website think14u.org and see what Dr. Rick Priya and his team can do for you. Nate, after looking at the Buffalo's receiving core, and I get it, that's a college one, but looking at Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn Jr., and Reed Shepard, LeJontay Wester, and realizing the Denver Broncos might have one of those type of guys as their receivers in Cortland Sutton.
Well, I mean, look,
would Cortland Sutton, with all due respect to Cortland Sutton, would Cortland Sutton even be the number 1 receiver on the Buffs? He'd definitely be the 2. I'm not sure he'd even be the 1.
Yeah, I'm not as comfortable with that comparison as you are. I will say this. I think he's a number 2 on pretty much any team in the NFL.
Okay.
I think he's a 2. Like, I think Cortland Sutton, like, here, this is going to sound overly simplified. I think Cortland Sutton belongs in the NFL.
Certainly. Oh, certainly.
I don't
And I think he
believe,
starts.
and I don't believe in the time that we have seen him that he is somebody that belongs as a number 1.
I think there was a brief moment, but since the injuries, no, I think it's fair to say that at this point, no.
And I will say this. I think that there are a number of people that have had very good, albeit not great or elite. I think there are a number of people that have had very good careers being a 2 receiver. Frankly, some of them being a 3 receiver.
Sure.
I mean, with the way the NFL works, it's okay if that's what you are or who you are.
Isn't Brandon Ayuk a 2 receiver? He's not now with Deebo Samuel getting hurt.
Ayuk's a little different.
Yeah, but I mean,
he's special.
But you can get paid. You can get paid as a number 2, and you can put up big.
You can, and you can also, you can potentially put up some totally different numbers. If you're not the one garnering the Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain, Jalen Ramsey of the world,
right?
I just think there's some things that you have to recognize, and is it disappointing to Broncos fans that he has not developed into being a 1, a true 1, not just a 1 on this roster, but a true 1? Yes, and I think it's okay if, as a Broncos fan, you're disappointed from that standpoint. But I think he still has a role and can still contribute, whether it's on this team or on another. It's not like it's, you're either here or you're out of the league.
Right.
And I think there are some people that try to make that type of a comparison, and that makes no sense.
He has sure hands. Obviously, that's one of the Sutton's big time strengths. But for the rest of the Broncos, drops have been a problem. Now, some of this, obviously, when you're talking about Nixon catchable balls, they haven't been the highest number of catchable balls over the first 2 weeks, but drops have been an issue. Greg Dulcich had an opportunity to have a pretty big game on Sunday, had 2 big drops. Little Jordan Humphrey had a drop. When you talk about the idea of the 1s, and that's why, and I wasn't meant to criticize Sutton, but Sutton, likely a 2 on contending teams. Josh Reynolds has been on contending teams, usually a 2 or a 3. Right?
Yeah.
Little Jordan Humphrey is a depth guy for the most part. Devon Vele, hurt in this game, is a rookie. Troy Franklin finally got action again. Rookie, 7th round for Vele, 4th rounder for Franklin. Neither of these guys expected to ever become quote unquote number 1 guys. But for the Broncos, when you look at the receiving quality of this, that's part of the problem too, because when Nix is getting on the ball on time and on target, the Broncos receivers have to pull him in. And that's wide receivers or tight ends or running backs. I mean, just if you're out there to catch a pass, you need to pull them in. That's been more of a problem this year than it has in years past. And for a core that Sean Payton built that is designed to be big and tall and lengthy, guys with big hands, possession is valued over explosiveness. And that's not happening right now either. For the Broncos, I don't know if you're Bo Nix, you're a little stuck there. Not be able to push the ball downfield.
And I think one of the things that's interesting about the problem that the receivers have had in terms of not bringing the ball in is it really is, some of it, Sean, depends on what metrics you want to look at, because there are some metrics that actually say that Bo Nix has only had 1 dropped pass in each game. But here's the problem is that there are some of the metrics that take into account, like, well, did he throw it behind him? Did he
Correct.
Where was it?
It needs to be catchable. I agree with that.
It needs to be it needs to be catchable. It comes back to what we talked about to start off the program in the first half hour about his ability to process, and I was talking about the scouting report for him before he was drafted. Those are the things that I pay attention to. But when I see a guy that right now, take this from Player Profiler, for example, he is number 3 in the league in dangerous plays, number 1 in the league in interceptable passes.
Oh my.
I mean, it just, like, I can keep going, but there's all of these, like, danger Will Robinson. There's all these danger stats, and Bo Nix is like in the top 3 in the league in all of them. But the way that I keep coming back to this, the way that this is a problem in correlation of his dangerous plays and putting his team in a position of having turnovers is because the Broncos right now as a team are number 3 in the league in pass plays per game.
That's insane.
That's the problem. And that to me is a bigger problem than what Bo Nix is doing when he is passing it. Those things I expect a rookie who's only played 2 games to do. Some of that is just going to happen. But the Broncos are 3rd in the league in pass plays per game through the first 2 weeks. That's stupid. That's just dumb coaching.
That's maybe the biggest issue, because we know that the numbers aren't there. We know that pushing the ball down. Look, this is he's thrown the ball downfield. We talked about 24 times in 2 games. 10, and then when I say downfield, I mean only 10 yards plus. So it's not that far downfield.
Right.
This is dink and dunk and dink and dunk. And when guys like Dulcich aren't even catching the dinks and dunks, you're going to have a lot of 3 and outs. And that's what the Denver Broncos are dealing with is 3 and outs galore. That this team just can't generate any sort of offense. And so now you have a situation where your offense gets its play calls in slow. They get to the line of scrimmage without the ability to read a defense. All of that to throw a 3-yard dump off.
Right.
The talent for the Denver Broncos is probably 1 to 53, probably about 30th in the league where they sit, where most of the power rankings of them sit. I think 1 to 30, that's probably where their talent is. This roster does not have a lot of top end talent. They're trying to build it. I think that George Payton does a nice job of getting guys that can at least make your roster and contribute in some fashion. But you're talking about real playmakers, top end guys. The Broncos simply they don't have that many of them. And so it should be about scheming to try to get things right. And the fact that you have this long and complicated an offense to just throw a dump off is really problematic. And when you throw the ball down the field right now, you brought up Nix's scouting from earlier. One of the things you're going to have to get cleaned up. And I really want to stress this, because I'm going to sound like I can tell you already, I'm going to sound like I'm picking on Bo Nix. I'm not. Bo Nix is who he is. I've compared him to Derek Carr since before the draft. I think that's the kind of guy he is. He moves better than Derek Carr. I get that, but he doesn't have the veteran knowledge of Derek Carr. But he's a guy that's high accuracy, isn't probably going to win you a game if you're down 14 in the 4th quarter. But if you put a good team around him and you have a good offensive scheme, well, go check out the Saints this year. You can do some things, but there is plenty of time. Bo Nix did get used to game speed from week 1 to week 2. Now, whether it stays that way, we'll learn. It's not a straight line. It always takes a little bit of time. There's ups and there's downs. But Nix seemed to stop throwing behind receivers as much, so he's getting used to game speed. The next step about getting used to game speed is speeding it up enough that you're planting on the right foot. Because I will say this. We know this is a problem with Nix, Nate. We know it's been a problem since forever with Nix. If he continues to throw off the back foot as often as he does, he won't make it. Now, I think Nix is smart. I think Nix is capable. I think Nix wants to learn and wants to get better. And that's why I think it's too soon to say that that's a major problem. This whole season is basically finding out about who Bo Nix is. But out of all the things that aren't his fault, the offensive line, the play calling, the drops in the receiving, out of all those things that aren't his fault, throwing off his back foot is. That's exclusively Bo Nix's fault. He's got to get better at doing it. He's got to plant, or he's got to eat it, or he's got to throw it out of bounds. But the continually throwing balls off the back foot, that's those high danger throws that you're referring to. That's the interceptable balls. It led directly to one of them that basically ended the Broncos' chances of realistically winning the game when he went towards Courtland Sutton in a pass that was always going to be picked off. In the NFL, that's picked off 99 times out of 100, and the one time it's not, the defender drops it. So those are the kind of throws you can't make. He does not have Patrick Mahomes' arm or Josh Allen's arm or those kind of guys. He doesn't have that. He has to be able to plant and step into his throws. The off-platform stuff, great. That's fine. He's still accurate when he's short, but he has to step into his throws, Nate. And footwork is the one thing that I look at Bo Nix and say, that is his responsibility. And he's got to clean it up sooner rather than later, because this will not get better. You can't push the ball downfield with any accuracy off your back foot if you're Bo Nix.
Yeah, well, most quarterbacks can't.
No,
their back foot.
No, they're rare. Only the rare ones can.
It's very rare for somebody to be able to do it. Look, he's got a lot that he can work on himself, and the thing is, I think he understands that.
I agree.
I will be honest. I think that he does. I think a lot of us have a negative vibe right now as to whether Sean Payton understands the need to be able to move some stuff around. I need to see something out of him. I need to see some adjustments. I need to see him recognizing the play calls. I mean, I gave you the number that just absolutely blows me away. You're third in the league in pass plays per game with a rookie quarterback who does not have a lot of weapons around him that are truly great. They're good. They're NFL quality, but they're not great. And you can't be number 3 in the league in pass plays if you don't have that, if you don't have the quarterback and you don't have the talent. I mean, you got to find a way to fix your damn running game.
The part that strikes
you got to
me
figure
as
out how to do it
too, Nate, is that Sean Payton preaches this after every game and takes responsibility for it after every game, that they got away from the running game again. But Sean Payton's the guy in charge of it. This isn't we were talking to Neil Apiro about the Buffaloes, where Deion Sanders isn't calling plays. Pat Shermer's calling plays. Now, Deion Sanders is the head coach. You can tell Pat Shermer what he wants him to do. But Sean Payton doesn't even have to do that. This isn't the delay getting everything in and all that. It's not Sean Payton to Joe Lombardi to Bo Nix. It's just Sean Payton to Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
There's no log jam here. The person that has to get better in play calling is Sean Payton. And Sean Payton, every game, says he'll get it right next time and doesn't. At a certain point, you do have to probably look at it and say, okay, this is a problem.
Yes.
Because if Sean Payton is the guy calling the plays, Sean Payton is complaining we're getting away from the running game too often. Well, the person who's calling that's Sean Payton. So a little bit of Payton's situation, and we know this. This is a guy that has had the genius play call thing attached to him a long time ago. And maybe over the time he's bought into his own press clippings. It happens. But when guys feel that they're smarter than everybody else in the room, and they say they have to get better at something, and then they don't do it. If this was a wide receiver, if this was Cortland Sutton, and Cortland Sutton kept hypothetically have a drop every game. And after every game, he goes, yeah, I got to clean up those drops. And then goes out and drops another one every single game. How would fans be feeling about Cortland Sutton? If Bo Nix says, boy, I need to clean up those interceptions, and goes out and goes an interception every game, which he has so far, how are you going to feel about Bo Nix? Well, this is about the coach. And this happened with Bo Nix, and it happened with Jarrett Stidham, and it happened with Russell Wilson. This is a Sean Payton thing. And the problem is it's going to be very difficult to ascertain what part of the problem is Nix and what part of the problem is Payton until one of them is more consistent. And the one that you expect to be more consistent is the guy that is not the rookie, the guy that's won so many regular season NFL games. He's in the top 20 all time and has won a Super Bowl. Payton should be the consistent cornerstone of this organization. And he's been consistent only in being inconsistent with the things he says he wants to do week to week. That's a major concern. We'll have an opportunity to talk about some of this coaching with our friend Doug Ottewill in just a moment, Nate. But
there's a lot to be able to digest. There really is. And, Doug did a great piece on milehighsports.com that came out Sunday night, Monday morning, talking about some of the common denominator things, and get a chance to chat with Doug about that in just a moment. I want to remind you here, though, as we sit at the beginning of football season, as we recognize that training camp for the Colorado Avalanche is not far away. The same thing about to get underway with the Denver Nuggets, the fall playoffs for MLB. All of those things are going on right now. And if you are looking to be able to have some action on it from a sports betting perspective, at Mile High Sports, we've done a lot of the work for you. We have basically stepped up and said, okay, let's figure out what all these different bonuses are from all the different books that are available in Colorado. And we put those together and are able to tell you, okay, here are the good ones. Here are the ones that we think are worth your while to pay attention to. And we've got them all in one place. So if you go to our website, milehighsports.com, or if you do so on your the mobile app, if you download the MHS mobile app, or you go to our website on your smart device, you're going to see that there's a tab there that just is labeled Colorado Online Sports Betting. That's all it is, Colorado Online Sports Betting. You tap on that, and it's going to take you to that page that has all of those offers there, because everybody likes different types of bonuses. I know people that like the no sweat bonuses. I know people that like the bonuses where there's a little bit of a deposit match or something like that, where you get some bonus bets based on what your initial deposit is. There's all kinds of Fanatics with their jersey giveaway. All those kinds of things exist, and they're all in one place. And so we did it at milehighsports.com for you. Again, it's the Colorado online sports betting page. So if you're looking for whatever the offers are, whatever the best offers are, that is where you are going to find them. And while you're there, remember that you can jump in and listen to any of our podcasts. I told you with the Abs and Nuggets getting started, you're going to want to be tuning in with Ryan Blackburn and Arif Dean with all the stuff that they are doing. And you'll get an idea of exactly what the teams are up to and what kinds of questions need to be answered. And I thought there was an interesting one. Ryan Blackburn did an article earlier today, as a matter of fact, Sean, where he said some of the sports books have the win total for the Nuggets at 51.5. And Ryan Blackburn wrote a piece for the website this morning that actually says why the under might not be a bad thing for this team. So if you want to check that out, if you're starting to get warmed up for Jokic and company, this is your chance. It's all there, milehighsports.com.
Yeah, Nate, you brought up the idea that the Broncos are third in the league in pass attempts, 77 pass attempts in 3 games. I went and looked over it. Their quarterback rating.
Well, and by the way, let me real quick. It's also like what the number that I gave you is also based on the number of like passing plays. So it takes into account, like, even if an attempt didn't happen, but it was gonna be a passing play.
Yeah.
it also takes that kind of thing into
even
account.
Official attempts, they're third. They have 77. The Detroit Lions lead the league with 84, and the Browns are 79. So they're not far off from being.
Because in total they have done 84. I think is the final number. 84 pass plays.
Right.
So one of the
sacks and
exactly. So the number that I gave you, courtesy of the guys at Player Profiler, takes into account plays that didn't materialize, but that were going to be pass plays. So go ahead.
Yeah, but even in that, think about this. You have to go down a ways, right? Out of the top 17 teams in the league in pass attempts, the Broncos have the lowest average, 5.0 per attempt.
Rookie.
The lowest quarterback rating of 51 of the top 17 teams.
Rookie.
And the most interceptions.
Rookie.
But all that tells me is what you pointed out. They have no business throwing the ball as often as they're doing it.
Correct.
None. Zero. And I get the running game is not where you want it to be. But that tells you, I mean, that is basically half the league. You have to go down to the Carolina Panthers at 18, who have had 20 fewer formal pass plays, 57, who have a lower completion percentage, a lower average per attempt, and a lower quarterback rating. And anytime you're comparing to the Broncos to the Panthers, that's bad.
That sucks.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. So this is the interesting part of it to me, because I do look at Sean Payton and I understand. And both of these games, Nate, this isn't one of the games. I'll go back to the Buffaloes where I was talking with Danilo a little bit. The 2 losses for the Denver Broncos, at no point were they a game like the Buffaloes experienced in Lincoln, Nebraska a couple weeks ago, where they just got steamrolled from the get-go, right?
Right.
And the script goes negative, and you've just got to start chucking it. At no point were either of the losses to Seattle or Pittsburgh anywhere near out of reach by NFL standards. Most of the time, they were 1-score games. There is no reason to throw that many pass plays with a rookie quarterback who, by the way, let's go, we talked this, you brought up the scouting a while back. Coming into the draft, I like Bo Nix. I like Bo Nix as a fit for Sean Payton's offense. I do. I still do. But there were plenty of folks that know the draft that said that's a 2nd-round guy. And the only reason that he's not is because the Denver Broncos are so quarterback desperate that they have to pick one. And they're going to pick the one that's left. Well, I think they would have always picked Bo Nix if Caleb Williams wasn't their guy, and he wasn't going to be because they didn't pick number 1. But that just tells me even more. Sean Payton should have known and been planning for this the whole time. And that's been my one beef since the day he walked in. One of the things I was very, very concerned about with Sean Payton as head coach is this is a guy that walks in, he has a playbook. This is my offense. Thump. Okay, well, what are you going to do for our guys? Just points to the binder. Well, our quarterback doesn't run some of those. Just points to the binder. Sean Payton runs Sean Payton's offense. He doesn't alter it. And that's obvious because he talks about how he's going to alter it every week and never does. He talks about how he's going to alter the frequency of play calls on the ground and never does. So that's the concern. When you look at the dynamic offenses in today's NFL and you realize that coaches at the NFL level have to adjust what they want to do and how they do it based on who is on their roster. Sean Payton simply doesn't do that. It's this old school approach that is so old school that you basically can't find it across the NFL anymore. Joining us to talk about some of that is our friend Doug Audible, the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine. Doug, that is an epic background behind you. Good, sir. Look at this.
Little busy, but it's okay, huh?
Well, it's only busy if you weren't in charge of every single one of those behind you and behind me for that matter. So I guess the plant's the thing that's out of place behind my head. But you look at this loss for the Broncos and the way it came across. The frustration here, I think, for Broncos fans is that it feels like the Broncos are still banging their head against a brick wall, waiting for the brick wall to come down. As Nate pointed out earlier in the program, the Broncos have 7 fewer pass attempts than the Detroit Lions, who lead the league. In 2 games that were close, that's basically malpractice.
Yeah, and it doesn't do anything to help out your rookie quarterback, which I think we kind of all agreed going into the season is that's objective number 1 this year, is you want to get the best out of this guy. You want to find out if he can be your guy going forward. And if you're throwing the ball that much and you absolutely cannot run the ball, you're hurting his ability to show you what he can and can't do. He's not playing in normal circumstances. And, to your point that you just said a minute ago, it feels like this is an offense that's being shoved down someone's throat. That's not even Russell Wilson. And maybe Bo Nix isn't quite equipped to run an NFL offense just yet, but that's what we were told. He was handpicked. This is a guy that's a processor. A quick throw guy. All the things that we heard. So I don't know if Sean Payton needs to dumb it down. I don't know if he needs to adjust some of the personnel to better fit what works for Nix. But it's definitely not conducive to what we wanted going into the season.
Well, and Nix's numbers downfield are atrocious. I shared it with Nate. I'll share it with you. Per NFL Next Gen stats, throws more than 10 yards down the field. He is 5 for 24. That's 20.8%, 132 yards, no touchdowns, 4 picks. In other words, he has 5 completions and 4 interceptions, and he's completing the ball only 1 out of every 5 throws, more than 10 yards downfield. That's awful. Now, it leads to a dink and dunk offense, but that also means that teams are stacking the box. Against the Steelers, they faced a stacked box 36.8% of the time. Only the Saints against the Cowboys had a higher rate. Saints had 41%. We saw what the Saints did to the Cowboys with it. They tore them to shreds. Derek Carr barely had to throw the ball to put up big stats. But here's the difference. In that game, the Saints called play action 58.8% of the time. Gave the defense something else to think about. The Broncos, 13.5%. There isn't a lot of motion. There isn't a lot of play action. There isn't a lot of deception in Sean Payton's playbook. It is basically a timing offense. And that's great if you have an all-time great in Drew Brees. But the presumption that Bo Nix is Drew Brees now or will ever be Drew Brees is probably a long shot. And so it feels to me that this is, again, where Sean Payton, when people looked and wondered why, when he got the Broncos job, no other team in the NFL seemed to want him. This wasn't the job Sean Payton wanted. We know that the first discussion ended up with Sean Payton going, yeah, thanks, but no thanks, until apparently partial owner Condoleezza Rice brought everyone back to the table. But this may be something to do with that. Sean Payton is just calling what Sean Payton does. It's like he's playing Madden. He just has computer guys that will just do what they're supposed to do every single time and not human beings. And that's a problem.
Well, and you say he doesn't have Drew Brees. He doesn't have Reggie Bush. He doesn't have Michael Thomas. He doesn't have
Jimmy Graham, Alvin Kamara.
A lot of guys that were really, really good offensive players, fantasy type players for years.
Kyle Turley isn't in their line either.
You're asking Greg Dulcich to do more than just make a catch, and we need to start with let's just make a catch. I mean, he doesn't have the personnel to do what the Saints were doing, and maybe you get that way. But I think that it's unfair to your rookie quarterback to say, hey, let's just say hypothetically that Bo Nix can play on schedule just like Drew Brees. Just say that. Well, number one, you still need playmakers. And number two, you're saying that every single person on that team, which is basically really in their first year of running Sean Payton's real offense, since allegedly it was so, torn down and dumbed down and whatever you want to call it for Russell Wilson.
Does it look any different? Does it look any different to you? Because see, I'm starting to look in the rearview mirror, and I didn't believe it at the time either, quite frankly. But I'm starting to think that this whole we dumbed it down for Russell Wilson. It looks like the exact same offense. And Bo Nix and Russell Wilson have only been good in that offense when they did one particular thing. They improvised.
Yeah, I mean, well, Bo Nix, if you really think about it, looked pretty darn good in the last couple drives against Seattle. And in the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh. I mean, he looked like a guy that was going out there and playing and not thinking and wasn't, especially when you throw the running game in, which, the running game looks so uncreative. I mean, it looks like handoff right, handoff left. Hope this expensive offensive line can push their guys off the ball enough to get 4 or 5 yards, which isn't happening. There's nothing creative about it. You mentioned play action, and I can't exactly remember the context in which you mentioned it, but that is one thing that could really help a guy like Bo Nix. I mean, you even think back to the Jake Plummer days. I mean, what play worked so well in that offense where Mike Shanahan would produce 1,000-yard rushers like they were going out of style? Well, it was the waggle. Jake Plummer could put the ball on his hip and spin out the other way and hit somebody almost every time.
Mike Anderson, right?
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that gives a quarterback a little bit of, time to think, time to play, rely on his instincts rather than just being a robot. And it does look like, I mean, even on some of the plays that Bo Nix is getting the ball out, a lot of third downs where guys are getting passes at their knees and they're 1 yard in front of the sticks. Those to me look like a guy that says, I got to throw it now. I have to throw it to this guy at this time. And he's in trouble anyway, given the down and distance situation, but he sure isn't if you think back to, and I mean, it's an unfair comparison, but the John Elway days when, if the game's on the line, a guy like John Elway was going to improvise. The only time we've really been able to see Bo Nix do that is when the game was on the line. And he's not being given any freedoms, I feel, quarters 1 through 3.
Right.
And it shows because it just looks so stagnant. And so I don't know if predictable is the right term, but there's no wide open guys.
No, and I think when you talk about that, Doug, this goes back to the Russell Wilson thing. Sean Payton wants his play run the way he called it on time. He doesn't care if you're rookie Bo Nix. He doesn't care if you're a 10-year veteran Russell Wilson who won as many Super Bowls as Sean Payton did. He doesn't care if you're Patrick Mahomes. He doesn't care if you're Lamar Jackson. He doesn't care how you play. He wants the play that he called run the way he called it.
Right.
But it leads to situations where, like, they're limited time in the red zone. Bo Nix has thrown 6 passes. 5 of those 6 have gone to Cortland Sutton.
Yeah.
One that was an obvious pick on Sunday in which he locked into Sutton and threw off his back foot, and that's going to be intercepted all the time. But some of it, too, we talk about the fact that these guys get to the line of scrimmage, and they're always sort of trying to desperately get the play up. These 2 plays are basically the same play. Basically, okay? I get that. Okay, in Peyton's playbook, and at the playbook that Dan Lanning had at Oregon with Nix, it was gas naked. Okay, gas naked is the play. The gas is the package for the run, and naked, of course, revolves around the bootleg. So that's the gas naked. So call that. You go to huddle. Your Bo Nix. We're calling gas naked. You go to the line. You evaluate. You maybe make an adjustment or 2, call something out, and then you go. Peyton's playbook. This is essentially the verbiage for that. King snug right on 52 smash Z jerk kill Q8 Z speed smash alert pipe. Which is easier for a rookie to get out and for all of your team, which is young and inexperienced, to understand what you're supposed to do. That's why you see these guys. You see Nix in the huddle saying it a couple different times. You're seeing him, check the wrist. You're seeing other players actually then check back. There are a couple of the shots in the huddle where you can see guys talking to other guys like, wait, what does that mean? What am I supposed to do? And then they get up to the line with 4 seconds to go, and they have to get the playoff.
Yeah, and I'm just impressed that you memorized it to start. I mean,
I memorized it. Believe me, I read it. I don't know. I didn't have my wrist thing, but I kept it on my computer.
Yeah.
But But I mean, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. And when Russell Wilson had the bus backed over him repeatedly, and they said, we dumbed it down. All they were talking about was the verbiage. And that's one of the things that we need to discuss here, because late to the line means fewer opportunities for everyone to evaluate what was happening. And Sean Payton's disinterest, let's put it that way, for whatever reason, in simplifying his play calling, because this is just the way he's done it. He knows it back and forth. So everyone else just is supposed to catch up and do it. And that's fine. That's what they're paid to do. I get it. But
we've all seen the clip of Bo Nix going into the huddle, and what was it? It said it took him 15 seconds just to call the play.
Correct.
And you see him check the wristband again,
yep.
And then they break the huddle and they go. But to your point, if you're going to the line with 4 seconds because it took you so long to interpret the play call, and get it out to the huddle, not only are you not able to make adjustments and checks and things like that most quarterbacks, Drew Brees, would be able to, for example, but you're also, and I'm trying to find a parallel in our lives. If let's say that you're on radio and, there's a commercial break and your producer comes on and says, hey, this is the end. We don't have another 30 seconds. It takes you a second to put your mind back in, I'm on radio.
Right.
Well, imagine that in football sense, when you have 12, 15 different cues in one single play call.
And 4 275-pound guys aren't going to hit me in a second and a half if I'm not right on track.
Exactly. You have to go from what did I just tell everybody to who's the first option to what's my check down to where's the protection come. I mean,
right.
I cannot imagine.
You need to try to pick out and identify the mic. Could you imagine Peyton Manning if you gave him 4 seconds?
Yeah.
Even Peyton Manning couldn't do it. Peyton Manning wanted to get to Peyton Manning could have and did at times basically ignore the play call and call it at the line of scrimmage once he saw what he could see. That's just not the way Sean Payton operates. He's kind of he's the puppeteer. That's the way he coaches. And that's something that's obviously a concern for the Broncos going forward. Is that going to work nowadays? I don't know that it will, quite frankly. And I think some teams in the NFL knew it, and that's why Sean Payton is the coach of the Broncos and not teams that were closer to the playoffs.
Well, and it's looking like, and I really, it's these games have become so magnified. We're 2 weeks in, everybody's looking at Bo Nix's numbers and trying to figure out, well, can the guy play? Is this a Sean Payton problem? I mean, I'm fairly convinced at this point that it's on Sean Payton, because we have seen Bo Nix play like an NFL quarterback. It's just been in really small spurts, only when they kind of have to turn him loose. I was talking the other day with someone, and this reminds me a little of when Gary Kubiak came in and wanted Peyton Manning to play under center, and it just looked forced. And then there's the famous game against the Chiefs when Kubiak basically said, you know what, just go out there and do whatever you got to do, Peyton. And they came back with a miraculous win because they played Peyton Manning's offense. Well, Bo Nix doesn't have his offense. He might, if he does have one, it's whatever Oregon did. And I don't expect Sean Payton to go back and try to implement a college offense on the fly. But I sure think that you can take some cues from what he did well, where which sets worked well for him, as opposed to, boy, when that back drop or when that back foot hits on the 3-step drop, the ball better be out come hell or high water. It doesn't make sense. I mean, you're asking a lot of a rookie, and I think from the Broncos big picture, 10,000-foot view standpoint, they need to put some things in that either A, give this kid some confidence, or B, allow you to evaluate him in some way. I honestly just think it's really, really tough to say Bo Nix is good or Bo Nix isn't good. I think, based on the preseason, I mean, think of the contrast between the hype coming out of the preseason and, wow, this guy's good and he's our guy, to right now, a guy that's basically completing passes at a clip of, 3-point-something yards per complete. I mean, it is dink and dunk if there ever was one. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett's numbers with Russell Wilson were better.
They were.
I mean, these are not good signs. Even one of two things is happening. Bo Nix really can't play, which I don't believe, or Sean Payton has to make some serious adjustments that help his young team. And I'm really more in that camp.
Yep. And that's going to require Peyton showing a little more interest. Maybe it's setting aside an ego to make things simplified for the rest of his team as opposed to make them catch up. At a certain point, leadership sometimes requires not just telling everybody to catch up, it's helping people catch up. And that means you have to simplify what you do. He is Doug Audible, the editor-in-chief of Mile High Sports Magazine. Of course, you can catch great commentary from him also on milehighsports.com. Great article about this up there right now. Go check it out. Doug, always great to talk to you. Thanks a bunch.
Hey, thanks. Next show, I'd like you to have at least 20% of the playbook installed and memorized. I'm impressed with the play, but I want to see a little bit more next time.
Yeah, I want to use that Oregon verbiage, or at least the way they do it in college, where it's just a card with like an ear of corn, Elmo from Sesame Street, like a random number, and like the poop emoji.
I don't know about
figure that out.
I know you're a baseball player, and I don't know if you ever played football. I did not. I love football in the yard. I love intramurals, whatever. But like, I've never actually had to try to understand an actual play call. But I think that if I were to play, I would need the ear of corn or the blue circle or, the smiling face emoji like that. Those are my kind of plays. I think I could run that kind of offense.
Yeah. Baseball, you just get used to the, hand across the brim 2 times, tap my shoulder once, tap that. But if I tap my belt, I waved it all off. That's about it for baseball. So it's a little bit different. But obviously for Bo Nix, there's a big difference between, a two-word play call and the word salad that ends up in Sean Payton's. And there's got to be an in-between for the Broncos until they find it. They're going to struggle. Thanks, Doug.
You bet. Take it easy, Sean.
Well, all of you who have subscribed right here to Mile High Sports today, we really appreciate it. You can click and subscribe for anything that you ended up seeing. We thank you for that and listening to the show on demand too, whenever it fits your schedule, but plenty of other podcasts you can listen to. Nate referred to some of them earlier. Ryan Blackburn keeps you up to date on what's happening with the Nuggets, with the Pick Axe and Roll podcast. Eric Dean's always on the ice with the Avs. Training camp starts this week for the Avs. So check out his podcast, Hockey Mountain High. Mile High baseball fans know that they get the latest on the Rockies with Drew Kreisman and the 20th and Blake podcast. Welcome back, Antonio Senzatella. After serious arm injury, they get the win last night. And will Bo Nix be the answer at the quarterback? Well, that's going to take some time to find out. But who better to get to it than Troy Rank? The Broncos podcast with Troy Rank, our friend from the Denver Post, is also featured on the Mile High Sports podcast networks. All that and much more. Just search Mile High Sports wherever you get your podcasts. Now, for the Broncos, what should they be focusing on this week while preparing for Tampa Bay? Well, we talked about simplifying it. That's a big part of it as well. But keep in mind that the ground game's got to be better. The Broncos have 163 yards on the ground. Bo Nix is the team's leading rusher with 60. So 103 yards on the ground from running backs in 2 games. That's disastrous. Javonte Williams has 11 carries for 17 yards on Sunday. That's his 12th straight game, averaging 4 yards or fewer. And Williams now has averaged fewer than 3 yards per carry for 5 out of his last 6. Now, to be fair, he appeared to be rushed back after his injury last year, and perhaps that explosiveness will never come back. Remember, he didn't tear a ligament in his knee. He tore 3. So there are 4 major CLs, cruciate ligaments in your knee: ACL, MCL, LCL, PCL. He tore all of them, but the PCL. PCL is the one that keeps in the back of your knee, that keeps your knee from overflexing and basically bending forward. So that one stayed intact. The rest of them were all gone. That's your medial collateral, your lateral collateral, and your anterior cruciate. You can imagine as those all get damaged, the explosiveness may not come back at all, or it may take a very long time. I think Javonte Williams still showed me enough in training camp. We were out there every single day for me to believe that it can come back. But there's, as Doug Audible noted, there's a lack of creativity in the running game as well. When you're talking about the running game and the idea that there needs to be creativity there, pre-snap motion helps with running games. Okay. Pre-snap motion can help a lot. Make you believe there's a pass, make you believe it's moving in a different direction. That's how counterplays can tend to work. They can draw your eye in a different direction and bring you over. The Broncos just run a lot of dive right and dive left running plays. They just do. And then there's a lot of dump offs. And certainly Sean Payton, with his offense, sees the dump offs as sort of an extension, a long handoff, as we talked about during the Mike Shanahan era. And there's some value to that. But right now, his quarterback and his running backs aren't really on the same page, and the offensive line is having challenges as well. But if this team can't grind out the ball against the Buccaneers, they're going to lose this game. Tampa Bay is better than you think. They have good coaching. Their offense is more explosive than you expect. Baker Mayfield seems to have found a home. The Broncos have to be able to compete in time of possession, and they have to do it while getting more than just 3 and outs. They have to find a way to get the ground game going. Tyler Beatty had 1 carry for 16 yards and didn't get another carry. Sean Payton said after the game they had plans for him, at least he alluded to it. They had plans for him if they had gotten in the red zone or specific packages, but they didn't come up. Here's the thing, though. As the head coach, they don't have to come up. You can decide when they come up because you called the plays. So some creativity is going to be required. We know that Audric Estime is out. He's on the IR. He's going to miss 4 games. I think Estime would have had a chance to be the starter in this game had he been healthy. For Julian McLaughlin as a change of pace back, there's a lot to like there too. But as a very small back, once the league sees you and gets used to your speed, you might be limited. So I love McLaughlin's heart. I love his ability. But to think he's going to be a star running back in this league might be a lot to ask. So if Williams isn't going to be the bell cow guy after the injuries, if McLaughlin, due to his size, now that the league's seen him, is going to be a change of pace guy that you can mix and match and be helpful, but not be a star. This is where Estime, I think, had an opportunity to take that rock. Now, it didn't happen because of the injuries, and maybe it'll happen later. I suspect it probably will. But in this case, you're talking about Tyler Beatty, and Beatty will have more opportunities, I think, in this game. Maybe you have to even look at Blake Watson. Obviously, Watson, you're talking about being on the practice squad. You have to elevate him. And if he plays well, you risk exposing him for another team to pick up. So maybe that's not in the cards. But if you can't get Bo Nix some help, your rookie quarterback shouldn't be leading your team in rushing after 2 games, okay? Especially when he's not a runner. Bo Nix is mobile. Bo Nix could run. He ran a little bit when he was at Auburn. Wasn't really used that way for the most part in Oregon, used to run when they needed him to run. But things are a mess for the Broncos offense. All over the place. Nothing is working right. The quarterback is not playing well. The running game is a disaster. The receiving core is mediocre at best. You don't have any weapons at tight end. And the offensive line isn't playing very well and is now dealing with an injury to your highly paid starting right tackle in Mike McGlinchey. So there is no part of the Broncos offense that is working well. Garrett Bowles was able to play. He was able to recover. So hopefully that doesn't linger. So right now there's nothing good going on with the Broncos offense. And Sean Payton, the man in charge of it, has to be looking this week and deciding, what can I do differently? Because again, the Broncos keep banging their head up against a brick wall with Russell Wilson, who ended up turning into a dink and dunk quarterback, who still managed to throw 10 touchdowns to Cortland Sutton, 26 overall. That looks like a number that would be stunning right now for Bo Nix to hit. He's on pace right now, by the way, for 0. Obviously, it won't end that way, but that's where he's at. He's looking for his first touchdown. To expect the quarterback, the running backs, the wide receivers, the tight ends, and the offensive line to all make a quantum leap forward this week is unlikely. So Sean Payton has to decide what he can do. Is it simplifying the verbiage? Is it simplifying the play calling? What is it? But the plays themselves are actually too simple. So how does Sean Payton find a way to add some disguise to what he's doing, to make the defense change where they're focusing, to make the defense have to consider that something unpredictable might occur besides the one little flea flicker that they pulled off? That was great. Not suggesting more gimmick plays, but less predictability would be good. And so here we are 3 games in. You don't know if your quarterback is all that good or not. You do have an idea that everyone else is underachieving. This is about the guy that makes somewhere between $18 to $20 million a year to be the quarterback whisperer and the offensive genius. It's time to step up and show that. It's pretty easy for anyone to look like an offensive genius when you have all-world talent. And I'm not discounting Sean Payton when I point out that he had Drew Brees and Alvin Kamara and Reggie Bush and Michael Thomas and Jimmy Graham and a stellar offensive line. But he did. And I think most NFL coaches, were they given that, would probably look pretty good offensively and maybe even great. I don't doubt Sean Payton's acumen, but he's got to do something different because he doesn't have those guys. And none of them are coming through the door, to quote Rick Pitino. He has to get better. And he has to get better in this game. We'll talk more about that as the week goes along. Thanks to Danny Bailey making everything work as he always does. Nothing happens without Danny. We can't do it without him. So thanks to Anilo Piro for joining us talking about the Buffaloes. Doug Ottawa, a little bit on the Broncos coaching. Check out his story over at milehighsports.com. We will be back at it tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. However you listened, click and subscribe. You know the drill. For Nate Lundy, I'm Sean Drotar. This is Mile High Sports.